we approve the agenda before we go into closed session?
That probably wouldn't hurt, but also,
We will call the meeting to order. And the first item is to approve the agenda for the meeting. So I need a motion to approve the agenda or suggestions for changing it.
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Unless I'm mistaken, there's no public here. Okay. So then that takes us to item 4, to number 4. And the first item on that is the Director's Evaluation Committee. And I will step aside and let Ellsworth and the committee take over here.
I'd like to request a closed session for the evaluation.
I move we adjourn to executive session pursuant to section 21.511 of the Iowa Code to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge is being considered when necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation. And that individual requests a closed session.
I second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
I think we have to go around for the recording and
Yeah,
say
voice vote.
each of our names and our vote. I don't think you can do it by hand vote for this one.
Right.
Is that what you remember too? It has to be voice
That's what we did. last year,
identification.
yeah. Hannah Schultz, yes. In favor?
Dan Kieran, yes.
Noah Kim, yes.
Eric Jones, yes.
Claire Matthews, yes.
Dan Stevenson, yes.
Tom Rockland, yes.
Robin Petzold, yes.
Carol Kirsch, yes.
All right.
We can probably stop
Go back from staying in the snow.
So they don't
You need to start the video.
Oh, yeah, video.
Oh.
Can I use a mouse?
No, they are. It's hard to
Left-handed.
screamers. So we watch Wheel of Fortune every night, and there was a left-handed Wheel of Fortune contestant yesterday. It's hard to spin that wheel with your left hand.
Something you never considered.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Most industrial design is for right-handers.
Mhm.
Handers are at a disadvantage in almost any production unit.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
Brent just asked you to hit the recording.
Done.
We are done.
Oh, they said that. So I think we're ready to move on to item 4A.
I think we
Yeah,
need to
4A. Yeah, we just need to
Yep.
vote on.
We're all trying to do the
Right.
right thing. We're all behaving.
I'm saying we've finished our closed session and we're ready for a committee member. Is it you, Noah, to report out from the closed session?
I'd like to make a motion, right, for
Sounds good.
salary increase of 3.5%.
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed? No. Okay, motion passes. Item 4B is setting the building calendar. And I didn't. Are there questions, concerns?
I have one change thing. So the calendar itself is correct.
Right.
It's just the memo.
Right.
Especially observed, I meant
Monday, right, right.
And for folks who are new to this, this is something we do every year. It essentially picks what days the buildings and employees or services are ceased for in recognition of holidays. Sometimes we have the choice of offering a floating holiday versus a set holiday. So this just lets us make that decision annually rather than.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve this building calendar for FY '23?
Moved.
And a second,
Seconded.
okay. All in favor?
I-
appointing the nominating committee. Well, this was going to be part of my report. I contacted 3 people on the board and they all said yes. So the nominating committee for officers for FY '23 will be Dan Stevenson and Tom and Claire. I don't know if we always appoint this committee this early in the year or not, but because we really generally report out in May, I think we announce the new officers. So you have plenty of time. And I think that I do appreciate everybody's willingness to serve. I guess we need to appoint, about the president, just
You
appoint.
have
a committee.
discretion, there's no board action.
We don't have to vote. So thank you, everyone, for being willing to serve.
Carol, would you designate one of us as convener, please?
Tom, would you please be convener?
Big Tom move. That's rookie. Say.
Yeah, well, you also asked me if being on the committee meant you didn't have to be an officer. That is true. Anyway, I appreciate the willingness of the committee members, and I even more so appreciate the willingness, if you're asked to be an officer, that you're willing to do it. Okay, item 4D. This is a project that came out of the discussion of banned books and basic attacks on intellectual freedom. And I believe a committee of Robin and Derek and Claire.
Now, Claire, I think, is going to present. the
Okay.
letter. And Anne, I should say, and Anne.
And was instrumental. It was actually really difficult for me to write this because I'm personally invested in a lot of ways on the laws that are passing. And so I wanted to be sure that we were hitting basically, and as Derek mentioned, we really want to hammer home kind of that intellectual freedom and First Amendment rights are being challenged. It's really our First Amendment rights and freedom to speak and freedom of information that is being attacked, because we also feel like that will be more likely be a selling point to people outside of Iowa City and in the Des Moines area specifically. A lot of the bills are continuing to move forward, even as most people are kind of in a holding pattern at the moment. I did intentionally speak to some of the bills in here, but didn't, the parents' rights section did not specifically say that we are for, because it sounds like we are for obscenity. If you say that you are against this bill, that we are in favor of obscenity and the definition of pornography. And even though we're for free speech, aren't necessary. That doesn't, it reads the wrong way. So I looked at this. I also wanted it to be brief. So this is about as concise as it could be, I think. And even honestly, if anyone wants to rigorously edit, I still welcome that, because to me, it's also still one of those in our modern society, TLDR, too long, didn't read kind of a situation. But we did want to speak to kind of a lot of the ideas are being proposed in legislation and the idea of transparency. But in a lot of these ways, our transparency already exists. Like, we are a public institution. All our bills are posted online. Everything is already transparent. We are following codes that are published and found anywhere. And so are every single school in Iowa, or you don't get to do it, along with public library catalogs. So I think there's a lot of misconception and especially amongst in listening to the Iowa legislature talk about what our jobs are as librarians. There's obviously some misconceptions about how we do our job. So I was speaking a little bit to that, but also are kind of couching all of this under parents' rights, that we want parents to have rights. And I don't think any of us are opposed to parents having rights over their own children. So I did want to add that kind of little piece that we encourage and welcome parents to be involved in their children's intellectual pursuits. So I did kind of couch that in there, but adding bills that are restrictive of materials and job descriptions are not the ways you get parents more involved in their children's intellectual learning. So that's kind of the lens I started with. And as Anne mentioned, like these bills would fundamentally change how we perceive libraries. It fundamentally changes our thoughts on how we choose materials, who is welcome and available to access the materials, and really, we're kind of a democratic idea that's unique in the world. Libraries are pretty unique in the world, having talked to people and gone to school with people who came here to learn our concept of libraries. It's kind of a democratic value, and limiting it kind of changes our availability of democratic ideas as a free republic. I'm happy to take any sort of thoughts on this. It still seems a little bit, to me, like in reading through it again, after looking away for a while and then reading it again, it still almost seems kind of highbrow, but for our general Iowa populace, but thinking of relatives of mine in the western side of the state, specifically characters in mind.
I have one comment. This is for, the reason we put this together is for public distribution with a signature from the trustees. So what's under discussion is if this is the letter you want to have to go out from this board because it's going to carry your identity with it, or what revisions are going. I can see Anne's kind of waiting to, yeah, okay. But this is why it's in front of you. It's not to bring you along with us as much to say, we talked about sending this out in public to the media.
Is your voice.
Right, and you should know what it says. And if this is not what you intend, to let the committee know, because we're not a committee that can make the decision for you.
I think it's really well done. Really hard job, really well done.
Hard to not rant.
Mhm.
It's hard to not rant,
Yeah,
but
I'm sure, any of us could edit it and maybe even improve it, but I wouldn't mess with it myself.
Certainly willing to, support this.
And
Thank you for your work on this.
the audiences, it would go to newspapers.
Register
Right.
Gazette.
Newspapers, and I'm thinking we possibly could send it directly to some of our representatives, if they represent.
Yeah,
But the idea is to make the public aware of the issues that are going on, and to make the people directly affected by it know there's people backing them, that they're not out there alone.
so unless there's other points that anyone wants to make, like more point specific, looking at it, I think I actually was reading it in our board meeting. But it's really going to be restrictive of digital media too. And I don't think that the legislation has even considered digital media when they're talking about this. I don't think it occurs to them, to a lot of people, that our media is also digital media. They're talking about removing books, but they're also talking about banning the internet. Like it's also going to have broader implications. There's a lot of concepts that multiple legislators thought that librarians just buy a big box of books and don't know what's in it until they open the box. I was actually a little shocked to hear that. They think that we don't actually know what we're buying until we open the box. Nobody has that kind of money. We review every dollar. Like nobody has that kind of money.
In all frankness, it's probably because those legislators it's been a while since they've opened the book, so.
Yeah, that's possibly true.
But also, if you look at this nationally, this is editorializing a little bit more. A lot of the investment in this is not local
Right.
government.
Right.
There are there are groups behind this on a national level, and they're not based necessarily in Iowa, that are pushing this through on a different political agenda. I want to give some of the local representatives the benefit of the doubt and think they're naive and being led down a path that perhaps they don't want to go.
I appreciate your even hand.
But I think there's a lot of external force, national external force on this issue, and we're a test case.
Mhm.
I think 3 states that are a test case, and we're one of them.
Thank you, Robin.
I'm trying to be generous. I'm not
It's absolutely true.
trying.
Because when have you ever seen campaign dollars poured into school board elections?
No.
That is a national trend. That's how it's point,
Mhm.
where there's literally election campaigns for school board members.
Right.
So do we need to vote to proceed?
Yes.
And
Especially because
is the whole board comfortable with this letter? That would be question number 1. Question number 2, are you basically comfortable with the letter, but you would like to have an opportunity to read it and give feedback, or are we willing to?
there is just, and I think there's a vital option, but I do want people to know this is pending legislation. I mean, this is not something we can sit and wait too long if we're gonna have an effect. So if people want time to mull it over, it should be an efficient amount of time. Just so that we
Probably
can
a
keep this
special meeting.
moving. Just because this is under discussion now.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly urgent.
Yeah, there's an urgency to it, timely.
And I'll say that, we've talked about this as a board previously and delegated board members to work on it. We had
Right.
our opportunity to provide input. I'm certainly comfortable with the board to approve it.
All right, is there a motion then to approve distributing this letter in
I'll move.
the name of the Iowa City Public Board,
Under our name, under
under the name of the Iowa City Public Library Board? We had, so you seconded, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Girl, I
Thank
just
you.
realized, do we need to
My pleasure.
accept the evaluation?
We did.
I think we did that in the close.
I don't think we did.
Can't vote
Maybe
in
you're
closed
right.
session, so,
I don't think we did that.
yeah, we
Well, I
only
don't-
approved the raise.
We approved the raise on the recommendation of the committee.
We didn't approve the
Evaluation.
content of the evaluation.
No, it does.
I don't know, but maybe we want to conservatively and do that.
Let's do it,
Might as
Justin.
well.
I don't think so, let's go for it, because she was checking out process.
I move to accept the director evaluation for the 2021 calendar year with the mentioned changes.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Do we have to roll call on that?
No,
Because
we
we're in
don't.
open session.
Okay, just to go back, I want to thank the people, I had a chance to work with you guys like this, I just was a spectator, but it took a lot of work. And Claire, for you to jump in the first year and kind of
Yeah.
steer us in the right direction. I know it wasn't easy.
Thank
And Derek did a lot of editing and
Yeah. For all the
significant
input.
contribution. So it wasn't an easy letter to write.
I'm just curious, where are we thinking? I think originally when we were talking about this letter, we were gonna leave it to, was it library publicity or something? So I feel like that came up, that we weren't deciding necessarily where this is disseminated, but we were leaving it to a little bit, maybe our decision and a little bit to the Iowa City Library to decide how they would like to disseminate this.
If you're comfortable with that, we had compiled a list and got about a couple of publications outside of Iowa, like Library Journal and public libraries, just so that folks are understanding that we are standing in solidarity with others who have done the same with us. Would you like to see that list?
I think someone on the committee should see, I don't know if you want to be the one to see that, or, but because it's going up in the board's
Sure.
name, a board
I mean,
member.
I trust your judgment, but I'd also look at it. I'm happy to look at it.
I think that this is gonna have a lot of power outside the agency, but also just want to mention how valuable it is for staff to see that the board is abreast of these issues, is as passionate as we are about making the positive changes that we can. And I really thank the board for taking the time to work on it and to put it forward. It feels like something I always said he would do, but that still takes lots of work and input and time. So I thank both the leadership team members and the board members for working on this.
Can I think because we could get media response, maybe you should restate the policy of how we respond to media as a board.
Well, I don't have it in front of me.
The basic idea is that the chair of the board speaks for the board, or the chair of the board delegates. So if the media contacts us individually, you have the right to speak for yourself as a private member of the community, but on behalf of the trustees, it's the president or their designate. The reason that's important is because the local media will call whoever can answer the phone first. And they'll just go down the list of every trustee and ask to get an opinion. And we want to make sure that the appropriate person gives the statement from the board.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah.
because I can, once this hits, I'm almost sure
I'll be out of
President will be on the
town for 2
phone.
weeks, but
But then you designate, like you designate, it's just like, once it hits,
The Daily Iowa.
the daily Iowa will be. And we just want to make sure that the message is clear and it's consistent from the appropriate person.
okay.
They will be pushy.
Okay. Moving on to item 4E, which is a policy review that's necessitated, I believe, by our decision to move forward with a vote on going fine-free. And I believe Ellsworth has an introduction to this.
So I just wrote through the cover sheet memo, kind of giving a snapshot of what we've been talking about this whole time, how we don't have the data we'd love to give you. We're going to give you what we have. Kind of remind people that the response from the public to the extensions during COVID have been very positive. I think there'd be a lot of community surprise if we went back to that, which is okay. I mean, we could deal with it, but I think it'd be surprising. And also just as a reminder in the packet that that there is city and council support for this, and that it feels like making this decision would be furthering those shared goals that we're all working towards. I think it can feel, especially during COVID, kind of like we're making decisions in isolation, but just wanted to remind folks that we have been talking about this as appropriate and making sure that we're not moving forward with something that would make other stakeholders uncomfortable or have a potentially negative effect on budget negotiations in the future. And then Sam wrote the memo to the traditional policy change. There was at least one question, if we need something to start us out here, about the terminology of fees and costs and what the difference might be. And I think Sam is prepared to explain that difference.
So in order to properly define what this policy is establishing to do, we had to remove the concept of fines because the concept of overdue is it's evaporating. But there are still costs for like replacement cards, faxes, prints, and things of that nature. Now, we don't always like specify what that is in policy because it changes sometimes rapidly depending on needs. But some of them do maintain like the $1 for the replacement card. And so we kind of mark those as costs and anything else, fees. And we marked everything else that would be like materials that were never returned or damaged as cost. It's the cost of that material. But the fees would be the fee for the replacement, the fee for printing.
Okay.
So if there are places that we feel like we need to tweak that still, I'm ready to, I got that.
So Sam, that was me. Like 801.2 now reads replacement fees.
Yeah.
I thought you just said replacement for costs. Oh,
Well, I gotta scroll down. 5
Sure,
pages
sure.
to keep that.
Thank you, Bob. And then there's a diversity toolkit.
That was a lot of that. Was that what you said, Tom?
So 801.2,
Thank you. All right.
replacement fees.
So, ooh, yeah, so it should be replacement costs now, shouldn't it? Yeah.
Well, or I, in my ear,
Yeah.
a fee is what you charge someone, a cost is what you paid. That might not be the way other people hear it. So a book costs a certain amount.
Right.
There's a fee to replace it. Those aren't necessarily the same
Right,
number.
that's a good point.
Hear what you're saying. So then, in order to make that stand fine, essentially, we might have to have the last paragraph of Beta 1.0 say circulation, library card and policy establishes costs and replacement fees for loss of damaged materials, because there's a difference between what you're charged for loss of damage and there's a difference between like the replacement of a card, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly how to resolve it, but yeah.
But
Yeah.
that sentence becomes kind of clumsy because these comes up twice in that sentence there. I mean, I think you're right, but I think the sentence might have to be.
So it could read, the circulation and library card policy establishes costs and replacement fees for lost and damaged materials and other circulation services. Or it could say, establishes costs for other circulation services and replacement fees for lost and other damaged
Like that.
materials, which sounds a little cleaner.
The latter.
Like that one, yeah,
Okay.
no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I will write that down. Thank you.
Sorry to divert us from the really big and exciting part of this.
No, the details is-
That is
Okay, if we could just wrap this.
Sorry, I'm covered.
I know, I know.
Speaking of motion,
So we've discussed whether to go fine free so much over the past couple of years. Dan, you even missed the best discussion.
I
The
kind of
longest one.
expected someone to show up.
Oh,
Yeah.
member of the public may be
Yeah.
interested.
Yeah.
So do we need, just by approving this policy, that's the de facto approval of
That's
going
fine
fine
free.
free?
I know, it's a lot of lead up, right?
Is that?
I'll leave it
Is that
for a
let
few
down?
words
Is that what
change.
you're saying?
really anticlimactic.
Okay.
I must, I teared up reading this today.
And I love that you teared up reading a
Just
policy.
fatigue.
I think part of it's fatigue and part of it, I was doing a lot of research on public health and libraries. And
Ah.
this is one of the a very strong public health intervention.
Yeah. it-
Getting rid of fees.
Huge.
Fines, not fees. We still have fees.
Fees, right.
I guess we still have fines too until we vote.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the revised policy 801 with the changes that the board has requested. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Oh, we did it.
You can get one too.
All right. Then we are moving on to item 5, which is staff reports. We've got the director's report first.
I think one thing to add, Jed Miller and I had the opportunity earlier this week to have a meeting about permanent step fixes for the town.
Oh,
So we
Oh,
went
another big
over-
cleanup day.
we went over with a our engineer, we had city engineer in the room, but also someone from the firm that worked on the ped ball in the first place to kind of go over what the vision for the handrails would look like. And then that will lead it to the development of materials for getting ready to solicit bids. So felt like a nice step forward. There were sort of 3 options presented. One being the installation of handrails, like we talked about from the beginning. This with scoring of the granite step, like we did on the inside of the building, for those of you who were here at that point, to increase visibility. Option 2 was those interventions plus a strip of, I think they call it accessibility tile or something that has the
Bumpy stuff.
raised, the bumps, so that it would go sidewalk, bumpy tile, and then step with the handrails. Third option was both of those interventions with a safety strip of some kind of fluorescent material on the inside. Our understanding is that we can start with option A, and if that does not solve the problem, the second option could be built in retro. So right now, we're anticipating that being the choice made. It's sort of the most intentional looking, but also we think will be enough visual cue. And both engineers in the room agreed that would make the most sense. It will be, as often is, a much bigger project, and it feels like it should be. There'll have to be quite a bit of paver removal, so they can anchor the handrails appropriately, things like that. But there's no question it's worth it, and I was really pleased to get that step done, and we'll look forward to the draft of the next step soon.
So the next step is an RFP.
That'll be our
Project kind of.
For the
approved.
steps.
for the handrail. And I think that right now they're sort of using the term spring, and so we'll see how that unfolds.
They're mentioning a year.
Isn't jumping up from the ground.
Yeah, right.
Spring.
And I did a sort of a question for the board. As we sort of watch the national trends in COVID response, we are seeing mask requirements changing in lots of libraries. We don't have a date for when our mask mandate might change, but when it's time to make that decision here, would the board like to be can we just follow the city's recommendations as we have in the past, or do you feel like you'd like to have a special meeting to talk about it? We've done it before, we know how to do it, so I don't have any worries about it, but I just wanted to make sure in case there were different expectations that had arisen. Otherwise, report stands. None of us are excited about the firearms conversation, but
That's a question about your report. This just could be my ignorance, but I understand under House File 2176, our librarians, if it's passed, could actually receive personal fines for distributing materials. What is our option for any kind of insurance coverage for their legal costs or to cover those fines because it'd be within appropriate job performance?
that's a great question. So I did reach out to Jeff Fruin and our legal person, and asked specifically about should we be making plans right now to protect classifications of staff. And the response was, at this point, they don't feel like it's sort of an imminent risk enough to be taking action at that level. They did say, if you're hearing different things, they'd like to hear what we're hearing. But
I'm nervous about our staff being fined for doing their jobs. And that, if I understand correctly, if they're not being in a union, leaves them with no protection whatsoever. Especially the coordinators, they'll have no protection. And so I'm a little uncomfortable when a city says, oh, don't worry about it, it's not going to happen. So I'm willing to give some time, but I think we should keep an eye on this issue because I think they're in a tough position. We're asking them to do, we could be asking them to do two different things.
right. Do you think that there are steps I should take right now?
I'm not an expert in this issue, so I don't know if it's a matter of keeping it on, just putting on the burner so the city knows
Okay.
this isn't true. I think the staff would bear the cost of that, and it makes me uncomfortable.
Do we add it as an agenda item for next month and then kind of,
Or even,
I was just going to say it'd be really, really unusual for it to go into effect before July 1st.
so that would give us
And the
time. to
session
work
would
on
end in May normally. So we'd have
So
a
maybe
little
we
bit of
just get
time.
updated on,
And I want to be clear, the city's response was not terse in any way. or-
no, right, they're probably saying, don't worry about it
They
yet.
just sort of said, you know, all our signs are pointing to,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have to.
I know, I just-
Um,
I kind of want to make them all aware that if this should pass, it's just going to be a city burden. too,
Absolutely.
That we need protection for staff.
Yeah, and I can sort of make some inquiries with other directors of bigger
And
libraries.
it could be premature, I just,
Better to be
This bill makes me
prepared.
nervous.
It theoretically wasn't supposed to make it out of subcommittee and it,
right, that's why I keep hearing, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. And that keeps progressing.
it keeps progressing. And it was supposed to have not. So,
And thinking back to the weird mask issues last summer with people seeming to be targeting the library, I do worry that a similar group may.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a little bit too reactive. but-
No, I don't think it's too reactive. Great times. I think, and we're really, and many have taken a real leadership role in working on intellectual freedom training for staff, thinking about what are the scenarios that that could come up, that we need frontline staff, even before any of this happens.
Yeah.
Just now that it's in the air. So we're working hard to really empower staff to know what the issues are, how to react. I'm sure people have seen those sort of freedom audits that are done in public
Yeah.
buildings where groups come in and are very aggressive and they record public servants' responses to sort of tough questions about rights and things like that. And they're horrifying to watch, and I can only imagine once your adrenaline really kicks in, trying to answer these philosophical questions. So we hope that won't happen, and but we want staff to be as empowered as possible.
So in the past, sometimes you mentioned that when the board asks for things like this, you never know what we're really expecting. And so we leave you kind of hanging. I just want to say on this, I just would like to keep it on your radar. I'm not asking for anything
Okay.
specific other than if this bill starts to go forward, we need to be willing to take some action very quickly.
I think we can add it certainly to the agenda for next month as well. But I do appreciate the clarification.
Okay. This person is here. Is she? People have comments or questions about the children's? No? Okay, Anne, I guess you're up next, please.
What about halfway through the classifying and long-term collection?
No questions? Okay, then Brent.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the security plan that we put on my report. So I put that on there now for a couple of different reasons. One is I wanted to lay out the basic components of what we've got coming. So, you know, I was sort of like, yeah, to give a high level view of each part, but you know, one of them is a security awareness program where primary audience and staff is trying to get buy-in, making sure they understand why we're doing what we're doing, that sort of thing. But it's also a journal audience, there's a lot of audience as well. So it wasn't clear. This is sort of like a thought thing. You know, we want to make sure that you understood what's going on with that. I would say that you know, as things have been coming in more in the focus, I'm realizing more and more we're kind of behind on many of these fronts. So I'm just trying to keep pushing my pieces ahead as much as I can. But one of the key places is, you know, I didn't have the specific request in the budget for this project, and that's something I should have had. This one,
I'll have it up the next one. So part of that is I'm still trying to figure out what that would be if I didn't have websites, or how the pricing works, or who can I turn to, all those things. That's sort of where I am now. And that's a little bit why I want to get this in there and sort of put that into your head. So I may be needing some help in terms of funds in some way. But the question is, what kind of help do I need? So one obvious, so I've got a few different strands that I'm kind of working on. One is, of course, the city. The city definitely thinks about security more than we do, and I'm kind of a few steps ahead. You know, I do talk to my colleague there, and he definitely is in the same building that he's overwhelmed with the amount. And from reading and watching webinars and those things, I think that's sort of an industry-wide kind of response to dealing with security issues. Part of that is just the sheer number of incidents that you're working with. It's also the amount of data that's being produced now that you have to kind of work through a flood of data trying to find parts. So the city is definitely, and we work with them also to this already all the time because we're integrated in a network that I'm integrated. So for example, you know, they are doing our firewall. So that's all about security. We also get our endpoint security, that's sort of the virus part on each workstation for them. And so we've got other projects coming that we will work with them in different ways. I don't think it makes sense to put all our eggs in that basket, I guess, because for a number of reasons. One is there's a pretty big culture difference between what the city's kind of goals are for IT as opposed to ours, and there's just a general so definitely we would be working with them on multiple. I mean, the security incident response plan piece that I talked about and things definitely involve them. They're one of the first people to call. And I do believe they have just hired a new permanent position that specializes on security part. So I think they just started. So, you know, I'm hoping that eventually that person could help step in a situation where we're going to continue to respond to the incident. But there are other ones. There's some government entities that specifically are created for local governments and public institutions that have a big web presence and offer different services. Some of them are free, some of them are for some pay. I have kind of put requests to those to sort of see what exactly they can do and how it would work. And I haven't had a lot of response to that, so I'm not sure if it's more for show or if I just haven't done it right. You know, so that is another thread that I'm working through and looking for help. And some of those might be, you know, scanning and testing from the outside to see if there's any ways for people to get in, or it could be we have kind of like detection services that can kind of install that would help. And they also help with supposedly incident response. So, third, there's private vendors. You know, there's a fairly well-known security consultancy group here that I think they work with people all throughout the Midwest. It's fairly well known. The city has worked with them. So I need to kind of launch that and sort of figure out what their pricing model is. How does it work? Are we in the realm of possibility of being able to hire them with what we have? Is it, you know, how does it break down the different kinds of services they can provide, that sort of thing? So I think that I think there's other ones that I haven't come up with yet. So I think for each different part and piece of the security plan, there'll be ways that I need to look for either services from vendors or maybe products. That's where they can help out. But I think that's what I kind of need to work on now is to figure out what exactly try to give us at least a little bit more.
I'm just thinking, do you ever think that was going to be your life when you took this job as a librarian?
It is. I always tell everyone that it's a bit of a drag. And I don't, I mean, it's a drag that it's not particularly interesting to learn about.
Yeah.
But it's also a drag in the sense that it slows us down. It slows the staff down. It's gonna slow everything down. So already I kind of tried to warn my colleagues as part of the security awareness program is sort of make it clear that things are not gonna happen as fast as they normally do because they're trying to get that. It's sort of like a boat anchor, My team, they love fixing things. They love making things work and building new stuff and trying to respond to staff. The staff frequently come and say, we want to do this project or whatever. We have an idea that technology would help. And that's the kind of thing that we enjoy the most. This other stuff is something that we're kind of, I force it on myself to try to figure it all out. And I'm forcing on IT, mostly responding, but
It's hard.
it's not the most interesting part of it.
Right, the answer to this might just be no, but is there a threat that's specific to libraries? Is there something that libraries worry about that other people don't worry about?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I think it's more just, it used to be a little bit that, the target for bigger corporations, financial institutions, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
now it's just for anybody.
Everybody.
There have been a lot of cost relief the concentration Ukraine and also the Iranian. I'm not sure what they're called. I think they're like their cyber warriors or whatever they are, state sponsored that are on the and are really going after that. I'm getting that from the government entities that kind of send out things. So I think they're more worried about like water supply and that type of thing. There's a
One of the complications I think that we feel as a library is, like Brent has done an activity with the leadership team several times where we go through, like, what if this scenario happened? And we talk about the political impacts, the impact on operations, the impacts on, and privacy is so like a dear concept to us that almost all of our response every time is like, well, that's catastrophic. Like the patron data got breached, that, how do we recover? So I think that makes it even harder to untangle as librarians. And as we kind of learn about this from Brent's exploration, I feel like one of his best skills of it is kind of breaking it down for the rest of us. And we've been spending time at every leadership team meeting, talking about pieces of this and just kind of making sure that he's bringing us all along. So it's a lot to think about and a lot to think about budget implications and things, but I really am glad that we're taking it on.
I think that exercise that we could in some form, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good
I-
idea.
I-
Figure out how to-
That would be great.
That would be a good idea.
Okay, Patty had a report in the packet. Want to elaborate or not?
I will just say thank you very much for your patience with me as I just kept calling and saying, Patty, how about this Friday instead of that Friday, instead of this Friday, instead of, wow, wine people are reluctant and whatever. Anyway, hope you can stop by the wine tasting a week from tomorrow. Cross your fingers. It's hopefully not going to have a new date. We will be their first in-person event in almost 2 years, so it's delightful that they consider us that good of a partner, and it's been a nice event in the past. So thank you very much. I'm excited as well to announce a new, just in today, Eat Out to Read with Nikki's Irish.
Oh.
Is it Nikki's Irish? Thank you. Down there on the Main Street, after your next trustee meeting on March 24th. So I'm gathering more details and we'll have information about that. And the Iowa City Public Library Friends Foundation has leapt into the digital world with text to donate. Effective yesterday. A little bit different than text to give in that it is tied to a credit card, goes directly to the provider that we work with to do our online giving, so that I don't need to make arrangements with every mobile phone company, et cetera. And the fees are very different, and we don't wait 3 months to get our money. So we'll publicize information about that. And things are just moving along. I'm happy to answer any questions about, yeah, it's been a hard month as we've lost people. We have events coming up.
The restaurants for Eat Out to Read approach you, or do you go after
It's
them?
a combination of both. I think that the word of family is out on the street that if you get a call from Patty, they actually send people. So it'll be good for you, restaurant, as well as you'll give a little bit of money. And considering we get 10 to 15 to 20% when you see $1,000 come in, I mean, to me, to know that restaurants are making the money that gave us that in one day, thanks to us. Gives you an idea of how much money is being made by people eating and drinking in Iowa City. So, yeah. If you have an idea of a restaurant though, please do let me know.
Thank you, Patty. I assume there's not any miscellaneous stuff floating around. Patty's report dovetails nicely with my report. First of all, I do want to thank again the people who agreed to be on the nominating committee, and I want to thank the people who did the evaluation, because I did that one year, and it can take actually quite a lot of time. But the library board always has 2 representatives on the ICPL Friends Foundation board. And that is what Patty is talking about. That's the Friends Foundation. They are basically a fundraising, especially a fundraising arm for the library. And we always have 2 board members who will also be on that board. Hannah's in her 2nd year, Robin's done it, I've done it a couple years, Derek's doing it this year. It's a really good way to learn about the Friends Foundation. The foundation, I mean, I was really pretty impressed with the level of people on that board. The amount of effort that actually goes into fundraising and keeping the finances straight and all the work that Patty does. So it is a good learning experience. Think about it, if you would be willing to do that. I would say, maybe if you know you want to do it, let me know. I kind of told Patty by April, maybe we'd have somebody who I could give her names for a couple people. Perhaps Hannah or somebody could speak to what the time commitment is.
The time commitment for me is fairly minimal because I don't sit on any committees, which is an option for trustees. Other board members are required to be on committees. Meetings are at 4 o'clock, usually on Thursdays at 4. Are they always on Thursdays at 4?
No,
They're usually at 4 o'clock, sometimes on Thursday, sometimes on board of trustee meeting days. So that's a lot of library meetings. But it is interesting. I mean, the foundation works really hard and raises a lot of money for the library. So it's been an interesting learning experience. And meetings are not monthly. They're usually 4 times a year.
4 or 5. About an hour.
I served on the fundraising committee. Gosh, I thought they were meeting all the time. But so if but it's a really good way to meet people, and it's really eye-opening to see all the tentacles they have out there in the fundraising community. It's pretty interesting. So if you think you have the time or the inclination, consider it at least. It's a 1-year commitment. You don't have to sign up for the rest of your life. And the only, well, you can. You can. The only other thing I would add is that I would like to send kudos to Jen for the board packet. I thought it was really good. I think she's going to be great. You can tell that it's even like when I turn to the agenda, the calendar for the agendas for the upcoming meetings, they have all those special events and things on. So I think you're off to a great start from my perspective. All righty. Announcements from members. Any board members have anything they want to say besides let's go home? The committee reports. Do we have an ICPL Foundation report?
We do, because we met last week. Anne gave a great presentation that the whole board was really excited to hear about intellectual freedom. We approved a new strategic plan. It'll be in the March Development Office report to the trustees, so you'll see it in 4 weeks. Bylaws were revised. The main change is that the president can now vote at all committee meetings. And it also allows for electronic notification of meetings for the corporate meetings. So another way we're coming into the 21st century. I believe the bylaw said that it could be faxed before, didn't it?
They did.
That's no longer an option, I don't
To
think.
21 days ahead, and sometimes I do my best to work with those deadlines, but 7 to 14 days is probably more realistic, so you get an email from.
So the corporate meeting is an annual meeting that all the trustees attend. It's at 5 o'clock, so it's at our typical time for an annual meeting with them. We also have a bunch of events coming up, which Patty talked about. And as always, we are recruiting new board members. So if you know anyone who wants to serve on the Friends Foundation, they can contact Patty.
Thank you, Hannah. Communications, there's a couple articles in the packet. Are there other things to be shared? No. And now we move on to approving the consent agenda, the board minutes from January, and then the disbursements. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Alrighty, and then finally, set the agenda for the March meeting. Looks like we have a policy review, a couple policy reviews and departmental reports. At this point, that's what we have. Okay, we don't have to approve that, right? Because we approve it when it happens. Just before I adjourn, I mean, I don't mind taking phone calls from wherever. I will be traveling for 2 weeks, so as long as they don't care when I return your call, it's okay.
Oh, they care.
Yes, I mean, right away.
When are you leaving?
Tomorrow. There a volunteer spokesperson to field inquiries from, sounds like the Daily Iowan.
Just the vice president. I got one too.
I'll do it.
You'll do it? Okay. Okay.
You'd probably talk to the Daily.
I talked to the.
I'll be on
Time
my
to
first
time.
name. They have your home phone number.
Got my cell number if I haven't lost it, yes.
Okay, well, in that case, I think we will adjourn the meeting. So thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, for hanging around, and please drive home
Hey, look at
safely.
that. I had a job today.
Sorry for you, it seems like that's the obvious.